Modern macroeconomics suffers from a severe categorization error. We routinely group financial clearinghouses, internet foundational protocols, tech hyperscalers, and hardware foundries into entirely separate sectors. Operationally, these enterprises are identical. They share the exact same structural DNA. They belong to a specific structural typology, Supranational Capability Primes, or SCPs. Whether it is Swift moving fiat capital or Google routing computational queries, they operate as one-dimensional, enterprise-out routing engines designed to push massive capability outward from a central hub to a passive edge. By failing to view these entities through the lens of macro-systemic prosperity, the market remains blind to the actual engineering failure causing planetary-scale supply chain breakdowns. This raises a structural paradox. Legacy SCPs like Swift or ICANN have run global infrastructure for decades without causing systemic collapse. The variable is altitude. Legacy SCPs remained at the meta and macro scales, operating horizontally across top levels. But modern AI hyperscalers and big tech abandon this constraint. They force centralized logic downward through all 5 planetary scales simultaneously, scraping local municipalities and human biology. This downward force creates structural friction that causes multi-billion-dollar supply chains to seize and traps capital expenditure in 5 to 7-year ghost queues. This collective systemic leakage is what we identify as the $700 trillion tetradic bleed. What the market interprets as an unpredictable macroeconomic crisis is actually an engineering failure. Centralized logic is physically incompatible with localized, multi-layered reality. To understand this, we must isolate the technology these primes wield. Advanced technology, like agentic AI, large action models, and ubiquitous compute, is inherently scale-free. Because it relies strictly on one-dimensional logic, it carries zero physical weight. It can pierce structural scales in milliseconds without encountering internal friction. This capability is authored in isolated, sterile development environments, known as one-dimensional Greenfields. Inside these vacuums, developers explicitly do not code for the limits of physical grid thermodynamics, the complexity of polycentric sovereign laws, or constraints of human cognitive bandwidth. The living Earth operates under a completely different physics. It is a 10-dimensional human ontological node, dense with overlapping legal and biological boundaries. When a supranational prime takes technology built in a sterile vacuum and deploys it directly onto the living planetary network, the technology functions as a severe systemic contaminant. This diagram captures the exact moment one-dimensional machine velocity collides with the physical, biological, and sovereign truth of the Earth. We define this high-friction intersection point as the 10.5D wicked edge. In this environment, AI and data governance cannot function as a static compliance checklist. It is a continuous clash of incompatible operational limits. Without a mechanical solution, the market forces human capital to act as a manual shock absorber, burning out operators who are trying to reconcile the mathematics by hand. Pushing advanced capability into a physical system without a structural airlock traps capital and stretches standard integration timelines out into decades. The solution is not to destroy the supranational primes or artificially halt technological progress. A global civilization requires their routing capabilities to function. This is the ultimate and. A highly enlightened local community possesses the 10-dimensional understanding of their region's laws and ecology, but they lack the operational capacity to autonomously manufacture a 5-nanometer semiconductor. P3C resolves this by providing the necessary structural bridge, Zyro Hive. This is an agnostic maturation facility governed by the 15-layer ontological systemic integration protocol stack. The stack functions as a planetary airlock. Its primary utility is executing kinetic decoupling before any scale-free technology is allowed to touch the planetary network. This requires 3 strict phases of thermodynamic physics, beginning with synchronization, the critical state before any physical or digital execution begins. Inside this state, the OSI stack operates as a universal Rosetta Stone. It executes a process called reverse seeding to translate the conflicting legacy contracts and ecological boundaries of all participating counterparties. By mapping these physical and sovereign limits in advance, the enterprise ensures they do not dig a physical hole or launch a digital algorithm in the wrong jurisdiction. Traditional project management operates under the hallucination that a massive initiative must completely untangle its regulatory friction in a vacuum before the build begins. This approach forces capital to sit idle, which collapses the financing entirely. In the second phase, the T+15 maturation state, execution begins immediately. The shovel hits the dirt, and the integration goes live. T+15 provides a live biological testing environment where the build remains active and capital maintains momentum. As the venture violently collides with the physical reality of the brownfield, the temporal buffer allows human collaborators, grid operators, and state regulators to audit and adjust the capability in real time. The physical and sovereign friction encountered here does not kill the deal. It actively stress tests and hardens the asset. The physical construction finishes, the T+15 buffer successfully absorbs all remaining physical and sovereign friction, and the biological airlock drops. The venture enters Phase 3, the T+0 collapse. Execution ignites into a continuous, frictionless state. This structural ignition solves the ultimate friction of the 21st century, the multi-layer settlement problem. This ignition simultaneously clears one-dimensional fiat capital, seven-dimensional physical grid capacity, and disparate algorithmic logistics across every ledger. True systemic velocity is only achieved when digital logic is mathematically chained to physical grid limits and sovereign settlement. Recognizing the global primes as highly efficient enterprise-out engines allows P3C to install the mandatory universal complement. We provide a demand-out architecture, catching scale-free capabilities exactly at the physical boundary. The machine is permanently demoted from an HOD-controlled gatekeeper to an intelligence augmentation exoskeleton, completely tethered to serving human demand. By perfectly coupling the structural scale of the machine with the biological truth of the edge, we mathematically protect the Earth while orchestrating combinatorial abundance.